I'm Lindsey Wakefield, Joint Co-ordinator of Buxton Biodiversity Group, and in this presentation I'm going to share my enthusiasm for recording garden wildlife and hopefully encourage you to start your own garden surveys. I've always been a keen wildlife gardener and kept lists of garden birds, but over the past couple of years this has grown into surveying garden wildlife and taking part in national surveys. I've been encouraged by local naturalists and by my two sons. Rowan already has more expertise than me, and he's in charge of the moth trap. Redwin is developing some great spotting skills and starting to help with butterfly counts. It's so important to encourage the next generation of recorders. Buxton Biodiversity Group is learning about the species that we have in our town. So a few weeks ago, I put together a leaflet of suggestions and links for surveying your garden. This presentation will give a bit more background and information about how to take part in some national schemes and also share your results with the Biodiversity Group. We're all appreciating our gardens more than ever this year, and as a family we've certainly spent more time than usual in ours. We discovered lots of new invertebrates during a weekend Bioblitz, and we're currently building our third pond. We're experimenting with different lengths of grass and making more habitats for bees. Our garden was pretty much a blank canvas when we moved here 5 years ago, with a lawn and a solitary hebe. We've added a hedge, lots of trees and a mix of native and cultivated plants. Gardens are a vital habitat for many species. It's estimated that UK gardens cover more than 10 million acres, which is more area than all nature reserves combined. Gardens can be extremely biodiverse due to the variety of plants in a small space, the variety of habitats that we can create, and the way a garden is managed that can promote biodiversity. Identifying all the species in a garden is a fascinating, if impossible, challenge. I thoroughly recommend putting a weekend aside for a garden Bioblitz, where you record as many species as possible. When things are back to normal, I hope to arrange Bioblitz days at local primary schools. We had a practice in our own garden at the end of April. We didn't count plants on this occasion and managed to record 123 species over 3 days. Several people took part in the Bioblitz and all the results were added to iNaturalist, where they can now be viewed. In the 1970s, zoologist Jennifer Owen began to record the species in her very ordinary Leicester garden. Her study spanned 30 years. She recorded over 2,500 species, including some new to science, and also witnessed a severe decline of wildlife after the 1970s. Dr. Owen had the assistance of her expert colleagues to identify species, but most of us rely on field guides, online resources and local knowledge. One of my favourite websites is NatureSpot. They're a Leicester and Rutland based charity with a wealth of records that form an online library. This makes a great identification guide. They're geographically close enough for most of the records to be relevant. And another site which I'd recommend is UK Safari, which also lets you search by species group. It's great to tap into local knowledge. I'd recommend joining Facebook groups where you can post images and request help with ID. Buxton Biodiversity Group, Buxton Field Club, Sorby Natural History Society and Lightwood Natural History are all likely to give you a quick response. I mentioned iNaturalist as a tool for logging Bioblitz results, and it can be used to record any sightings and also to help with identification. It works best as an app on a mobile phone, and with the phone used to take the photo. You add the observation by selecting the image, and if you're not sure of the species, various options are suggested. You can also choose a broader group, such as butterflies, and wait for experts to identify it for you. Using the phone app means that the location and time are automatically detected, and the record gets added to the map. Accessing iNaturalist from a desktop is the easiest way to view all the records for Buxton. I'm now going to move on to talk about some national surveys which anyone with a garden can join. The British Trust for Ornithology has been running Garden BirdWatch for 25 years. It's currently free to join, so it's an ideal time to find out how simple it is to log your garden birds. Counts are made weekly, starting on a Sunday. You note down the maximum number of each species seen during the week. Those of you familiar with the phenomenon of birds disappearing during the RSPB Big Garden Birdwatch will recognise that this is a much better method. You can also record other garden wildlife such as butterflies. Garden Birdwatch provides a huge amount of valuable data. For example, the records were an important part of studying the decline of the house sparrow and starling. Both species are on the British Red List, having declined by more than 50% in the past 30 years. In the case of the starling, urban and suburban and garden habitats support nearly 60% of the breeding population. A BTO study focusing on sparrows showed that gardens support some of the highest densities. In Buxton, we seem to have good populations of house sparrow and starling. It would be great to receive sightings from all over town to give us a clearer picture. You can share your weekly garden bird counts with the Biodiversity Group using the spreadsheet attached to the garden survey leaflet. The swift is another species well worth noting. It's also suffered massive decline, and we're fortunate that they still breed in Buxton. Simon Fussell is keen to receive your swift sightings, particularly the location of nest sites. As well as filling in a spreadsheet for birds, it's really useful to note down breeding behaviour, nesting time and nest sites in your garden and close by. In terms of numbers of species in our gardens, insects are by far the biggest group. Moths and butterflies are really important indicators of biodiversity and vital pollinators. Populations can change rapidly, so survey results can be used to assess progress towards biodiversity targets and to inform policy. Moth and butterfly data contributed to the State of Nature report that was published last year, and big declines were recorded for many species. Monitoring moths in your garden is fascinating. You'll be amazed at the variety of species. The Victorian names are as enjoyable as the moths themselves. There are brocades, footmen, wainscots, beauties, prominents and ermines. In the future, the Biodiversity Group hopes to offer moth trapping events where we set a trap in your garden and introduce you to the pleasures of mothing. And of course, we'll gather more records for the town. The Garden Moth Scheme is a well-established survey where you record moths every Friday between March and November. You need a light trap, of which there are several types. We use a portable Skinner trap, which packs away into a neat box. The trap is left out all night and needs to be checked early in the morning, hopefully before the birds have picked off the moths from around the outside of the trap. Most moths fall inside the trap and are quite safe among the egg boxes until they are checked and released in the morning. It gets really busy in the trap in the summer. This recording is from July last year, when we had several hundred moths to check in the morning. We've been trapping for just over a year, and we've recorded 156 of the 900 UK species of macro moth in our garden. We enjoy moths so much that we've raised several species from eggs or caterpillars and currently have oak egg cocoons that should hatch next month. Moths are a vital part of the food chain, and their caterpillars are a particularly important food source for small birds. Blue tits need to feed their young 100 caterpillars each per day, so need many thousands to rear a brood. We've added a variety of native trees to our garden as caterpillar food plants. Most caterpillars eat a variety of different species. We've looked at the moths that visit our garden and found that hawthorn is the plant eaten by the greatest number of species. Blackthorn, sallow, willow, birch and oak are also great for attracting a range of moths. We found that we have a number of species that eat nettle, dock and bedstraw. Our captive caterpillars are particularly fond of non-native Himalayan birch. Sticking with insects, I'm now going to look at surveying butterflies, which is more straightforward than recording moths. The UK has 59 species of butterfly, compared to 900 larger moths, but they are equally important bioindicators. Butterfly Conservation's Garden Butterfly Survey is really easy to use. You open a free account with details of your garden and grid reference, and then add butterfly sightings as often as you like, counting the maximum number of each species seen at one time. I must mention here that our resident expert Steve Orridge has produced identification guides to Buxton butterflies, and these are linked through the garden survey leaflet. I'm going to share the main links at the end of this presentation. With around 10 species of butterfly typically visiting gardens, you can easily grow a good selection of caterpillar food plants. Nettles are important for a number of species. Also try growing hops, lady smock, brassicas and meadow grasses. For early butterflies like the small tortoiseshell, it's really important to grow flowers that provide nectar in March, like winter flowering heather and mahonia. There's also a list here of summer flowers such as verbena that are guaranteed to attract butterflies. I'm going to finish by talking about a completely different survey technique used to detect hedgehogs. Like so many of our species, hedgehogs have suffered massive declines, but there are lots of actions we can take to improve our gardens as hedgehog habitats. It may be that you already have them visiting. Earlier this year I started the Buxton Hedgehog Project to work with local schools promoting hedgehog conservation. I'm asking residents of the town to complete a survey about hedgehog sightings. This can be found at buxtonhedgehogproject.org, and you can record recent or historical sightings and roadkill hedgehogs. So if you're not sure whether you have hedgehogs, how can you find out? You can set a camera trap overnight and also look out for hedgehog poo on your lawn. But the best method of surveying for hedgehogs is using a tunnel that was specially designed by the Mammal Society and Nottingham Trent University. The tunnel is hedgehog-sized, and so it's too small for cats. It's set up with attractive food such as dog meat in the centre, surrounded by special ink pads and white paper to catch the hedgehog footprints. When we're out of lockdown, you'll be able to borrow a tunnel to survey your garden, and hopefully the results will look like this. In January, I took in a hedgehog that was too small to hibernate. She had a lungworm infection and needed regular medication. She was finally well enough to be released a couple of weeks ago into our garden, having doubled in weight. And the picture of her here is just before release. So I'm going to end with an important request. Please make your garden hedgehog friendly and encourage others to do the same. Hedgehogs face so many dangers caused by humans: slug pellets, strimmers, and entanglement in litter, to name a few. The survey results coming in show we have hedgehogs doing well in some parts of town, but they're vulnerable and they need our help. Just a quick summary to end. I hope you found this useful and that you're encouraged to survey your garden. It really will help you improve your garden further for wildlife. You'll also be adding to records for our town and to nationwide studies that help to form conservation policy. The slides from this presentation and the garden survey leaflet are available by going to these web addresses. All the sites and surveys that have been mentioned have direct links. Thanks for listening.